Hi, I'm Halle Eavelyn, and this is Goddess of Crypto. I am first and foremost a mindset coach, and during the course of my work, I have learned more than anything else that mindset is everything. It is at the root of everything you do, every choice that you make, and every piece of growth that we get to experience as human beings. Now, I know that's a big statement, but just trust me. After having worked with as many people as I have, I can assure you it is completely true. And no, you're not an exception. It's true for you too. I know that because I always think the smarter we are, the more we like to think we are all exceptions. The truth is, in this regard, if you're a human being, mindset is everything for you too.
The sacred divine feminine is creative, abundant, flowing, receiving, and disruptive. And the new energy of money, including cryptocurrency, decentralized finance, NFTs, and even the metaverse, is all these things too. Welcome to the Goddess of Crypto, a weekly show where women who are already in this powerful space will cover these topics simply, so you can relax into knowing that the future of finance is female.
So, what does this mean? I mean, it's at the root that's going to cause you to make a decision, not make a decision. It's the thing that's going to cause you to grow or stay still, the thing that will cause you to move past your fear or stay stuck. And the good news is the future is completely unwritten. And even if you believe in fate, there are still choices you get to make. There are decisions you can say, this is something that I want to do differently. I'm going to do differently going forward. So, what does all this have to do with crypto? What does it have to do with the new energy of money? Pretty much everything. Why? Wait, say it with me, because mindset is everything. So when it comes to your choices around whether you invest, when you invest, how much you invest, and what your risk tolerances are, this stuff is all learned. Like when you're a kid, you know that depending on the experiences you've had with money, you've in rare cases learned to save it, put it away, that money will always be there for you. And in most cases, again, at least in my experience, it usually meant that you learned you weren't enough. You didn't have enough. You don't have enough. You can't have enough. There are always other people who are going to have more than you. You've made a mistake. You can't recover from it. You're too old. It's too late. You can't fill in the blank. What I want you to know more than anything else, and what I really want you to know more than anything as you're listening to this, is that none of this has to be true. It may be true in the sense of, yeah, this thing happened to me in the past, but it isn't true in the sense of this is how it has to be for me in the future. And the difference really is you making a decision, you making a choice, you saying it's going to be different now. Look, I promise you, this is not just platitudes. I promise you, I'm not just, being the crazy lady talking. It actually works. And here's how I know. Because if you don't believe that it's possible, it's not going to happen. So ask yourself the question, is this possible? Whatever the it is it possible for me to be a millionaire? Is it possible for me to be a multimillionaire? Is it possible for me to have more money than I can spend? Is it possible for me to really enjoy my life? Is it possible for me to expand my money story until it's all completely in alignment with my deepest desires? And please notice, by the way, that I didn't say all the negative stuff. We're really good at the negative stuff. We're good at beating ourselves up. We're good at saying the things that aren't working. We're good at saying, I don't know enough. I don't understand enough. I'm not educated enough to, for example, invest in crypto. The truth is, we are all empowered with the basics, which is like, for example, you've got to play to win. That's a pretty good basic. If you're not in the game, if you're not experiencing making those choices, even on a small scale, you're not going to get anywhere. We have to choose what we want and set our intentions from a place of what's possible for us. In Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert shares this wonderful story. There's an old Italian joke about a poor man who goes to a church every day and prays before the statue of a great saint, begging, "Dear saint, please, please give me the grace to win the lottery." This lament goes on for months. Finally, the exasperated statue comes to life, looks down at the begging man, and says in weary disgust, "My son, please, 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 buy a ticket." Still quoting Liz Gilbert, prayer is a relationship. Half the job is mine. If I want transformation, but can't even be bothered to articulate what exactly I'm aiming for, how will it ever occur? Half the benefit of prayer is in the asking itself, in the offering of a clearly posed and well-considered intention. If you don't have this, all your pleas and desires are boneless, floppy, inert. They swirl at your feet in a cold fog and never lift. I love that woman. It is time for women to step into the future of wealth, for us to set intentions that will transform us and then take action to get there, unafraid. So if you think, hey, I'd love to get involved in this industry that's just starting and is totally nascent, you're right, you do have to get involved. And as I'll probably remind you 100 times on these episodes, I got to see the rise of the internet. I was a young pup in my first job when it happened. And as a result, I didn't understand what I was seeing soon enough, even though I did make some really powerful choices and some investments in companies that are still around today and still doing amazingly some of the biggest things in the world because they got started during the time of the internet. Now, most of the time I was busy saying I didn't understand, I didn't know enough, I was too young, I didn't have the education, I didn't have the background, I wasn't an economist, I wasn't in the stock market. I never said, oh, I could learn this and it will be easy. Partly because, hey, the internet wasn't around yet for me to get all of these lessons. A lot of our information came from books and not, downloadable videos that are free online everywhere. And look, the basics are the basics. The basics of money are still the basics. And if you want to understand what you're doing, you need to understand the basics. I'm not the person who's going to teach you the basics of how to invest. What I will do is make it clear to you in many different ways, both with the guests that I have on the show and with my own personal experience and my coaching expertise, that now is the time. And that if you miss the window of now, you will miss the opportunity for the easiness of it. It's going to get more complicated later. It's going to be a bigger learning curve later when you get in there. Now, you're actually kind of at the beginning of the surge of the wave, maybe even early before there is any kind of a surge, as the wave is starting to gather energy. That means now is a great time. So let's talk about fear. What happens with fear is we say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll allow myself to learn tomorrow. I'll get started tomorrow. I'll learn it first and then I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow rarely comes. I don't want to say never because, eventually maybe you will make a decision. Wouldn't it be better if you made that decision today? And fear is the thing that will stop you. And as fear stops you, you will have that story in your head that you don't understand or you don't know. And guess what? There was a time you didn't know how to walk. There was a time you didn't know how to ride a bike. There was a time you couldn't understand how to speak the language that you're listening to right now that seems perfectly normal and perfectly understandable. So how do you get that to change? How do you go from not knowing to knowing? The answer is you have to get past your fear first in order to take the next step, then the next step, and every single step after. So the question I like to ask under these circumstances is, what is my next smallest step? What would be the very first thing I might do after listening to this episode? If I want to become a part of this new industry, if I want to become a part of this thing that is growing, what could I do? The answer is, for example, I could get an account. There are some basic places I can send you to where I won't feel like I guess, shilling for them. There's a couple of places that a lot of people are going to now to download information as well as to open wallets to invest in crypto. The two I'm going to suggest to you now are crypto.com and coinbase.com. And you don't have to do anything right now. All you want to do is get a little bit of the basics of the education. And there's beginning crypto stuff on both of those sites that is free. I want to recommend that you check them out because they're trying to help new people understand. And there are also a bunch of Facebook groups that are involved right now, teaching the basics, giving you beginners educations for free. I'll post a couple that I'm in that I like, and I don't get anything for doing that. I'm just going to suggest them to you, and those will be in the show notes. They'll be on my website, on my blog. What I want you to understand, though, is you don't need to be afraid to get the basic education. I do want to say, and again, this is something you're going to hear from me a lot. Don't give anyone else your money to invest for you. Right now, you don't know enough to do it, and there are a ton of scams out there. What you do want to do is just get a little bit of education so you can just take the edge off of your fear, so you can start to understand it is not rocket science. Now, some of the stuff you'd get into later, like staking or charting, things like that, they're more complicated. But to do the basic stuff, which is just buy a little and hold on to it for a while, you could do that right now. It would be fairly straightforward, and it's becoming easier and easier every day. There are choices you can make that would maybe be supportive for you as you're starting to get in and understand more. The reason I'm talking about the specifics of this is simply because of fear. A lot of people right now are not aware there is a market for a new type of money. They're not aware there's a new type of experience coming down the pike. And again, we're starting to see that it's very similar to the internet. Sometime between 1994 and 1995, this web thing started happening. And now, almost 30 years later, we're getting into something called Web 3.0, which is going to be a much more immersive experience. It's what the metaverse, if you've been hearing that word, is about. Some of these episodes will also be about the metaverse and what it can do for you. But for now, just for this moment, understand the things that you take for granted, like online shopping, were simply unknown in 1995. And that Jeff Bezos guy was starting Amazon.com. He looked like a complete idiot for starting an online bookstore because who would want to buy books online? And for calling a bookstore Amazon because wasn't that arrogant? Well, now we look back, we call Bezos a visionary for having those intentions and a billionaire for seeing them through to the results. That's the distance we've come over the last 25, almost 30 years. It's important that you understand over the next 25 or 30 years, we're going to see a lot more and we're going to come further than that distance because believe it or not, information is getting faster, which I've talked about in one of the previous episodes that bears repeating. Information on the internet is doubling at about the rate of every 12 hours right now. Just kind of crazy if you think about it. In other words, you're never going to know everything there is to know because more information keeps getting provided all the time. So why not get like a tiny little corner of what you need to learn, just enough to get started in a way that will at least allow you to have the education. And then you can make an informed decision about whether you want to start investing in the market for now. Again, don't trust anybody with your investment money. You're just learning. Learning has zero cost to it. These days, at least the basics. The other thing that I want to talk about is the issues around fear as far as it affects the market cycle. There's an old expression, when there's blood on the streets, buy real estate, even if it's your own. And that's because when nobody wants to live there, the housing is cheap. Eventually, the cycle changes and then the housing is worth more money. My mother bought a flat she's been living in since 1974 in London, in what was a really crappy part of town, an area of London called Bayswater. And now, 30 years later, that flat is worth close to £1 million. She bought it for something like £30,000. Based on inflation, that amount should have risen to about £90,000. What's the difference? Well, the area gentrified completely. It became a really popular and beautiful area. If you've ever seen the movie Notting Hill, it's adjacent to Notting Hill, and eventually the popularity of that area spilled over. It's become a really beautiful place to live. Yes, with a walled garden and everything. Now, when would be a good time to sell that flat? Sometime before there's a downturn in the market cycle and that area becomes not so nice again, which may eventually might happen. It hasn't happened so much in places like Central Park West or other areas in New York, but you can see that there are areas that gentrify and areas that go down in any major city. Detroit, for example, has had a terrible time. You can buy houses for $1. So when is a great time? Not a great time to get into crypto. Now is a great time. Why? Because there are so many people out there who are saying it's going to fail. But if the internet has taught us anything, it's that by the time it feels like it's time, it will be too late to get in at the beginning. And that is true of any cycle. So if you're one of those people who's on the fence and thinking, oh, I'd love to own it, get a little education, go get yourself a little education. Go get started in the learning process. You're not ready to invest yet. If you're listening to this and you've never done it before, however, you are ready to get started learning. And when you make those choices with the market cycle, timing that's now, 6 months from now, even a year from now, you're still enough ahead of the curve. It's kind of like the internet in like 1996, not the internet in 2001 after there was a big crash, and now everybody wanted in on it as it was starting to go really high again. It's a very interesting time to be alive, in my opinion. And it would be really great if you checked in with yourself and asked, what do I think is possible for me? I'm so pleased that you're here. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Goddess of Crypto. I really want to encourage you to share this with your friends, especially other women. My idea is that women will tell other women about Goddess of Crypto, and they'll tell other women until all of us women are getting educated. All of us women are having the opportunity for this new energy of money. And remember, be unafraid. Learn, get educated, and enjoy the experience. If you like this episode, please please comment on it, and please do share it with at least one other woman that you know this will help. I'll see you next time.
Every week, transformational wealth coach Halle Eavelyn leads a conversation that helps to ensure that women everywhere can learn to surf the coming tsunami of the new energy of money. You can find her at goddessofcrypto.me. That's goddessofcrypto.me. Be sure to subscribe to Goddess of Crypto on your favorite platform or watch the show on YouTube. And remember, wealth isn't just your privilege, it's your right.